All right, Thursday night, Super Bowl week of Super Bowl 59. The Krug Show back with you on a Thursday night, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. And we're also brought to you by Better, as you can see on the bottom of the screen. And we are going to make a better lineup for Super Bowl 59. We're going to talk a little Niners. Jake Hutchinson is in the house. Good to see Jake. We got a lot to get to, and you know what? The show. I don't grade them, but I got a vibe on this one. I got a vibe that this is going to be a very, very good show. Just a vibe. We'll talk about it at the end, I guess. But
listen, I'm a vibes man, so I'm all about it.
Jake's in the house. It's going to be a great night. We're going to talk some Niners. We're going to talk some NFL ball. Tonight was NFL honors awards as well. Josh Allen, the MVP of the league. We got a lot to get to. It's all straight ahead. It's the Krug Show, and it begins in 5, 4. All right, welcome to the Krug Show. Fire up the band. Once again, thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Better. This live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. And we're going to do exactly that in a bit. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. Everyone who does automatically is entered to win the Ricky Pearsall jersey. It will be given away in days at this point. Super Bowl Sunday in the postgame show, the signed Ricky Pearsall 14 jersey is given away. Everyone who signs up is automatically entered into the drawing to win that jersey, and we'll award that, as I said, or announce that winner, I should say, after Super Bowl 59. So thanks to Better for being a premier sponsor of the Krug Show. Jake, one of the things that I love about the Super Bowl is that they bust out the best. Like the Joe Montanas of the world show up at the Super Bowl because somebody's going to pay him probably to go, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that, by the way.
I went to, there was like DK Metcalf on like a tricycle. You see a lot of weird stuff during Super Bowl week.
Yeah. And in New Orleans, it's the best. I don't know. Were you at Super Bowl 47 when the Niners, Ravens? No.
Before my time, unfortunately.
Yes. That was an epic week in New Orleans. So I am a little jealous of the Eagle media and the Kansas City media. But, man, it wasn't like the Niners just missed it by a hair, right? We kind of saw this coming on like an iceberg. So it wasn't a surprise. But, man, it was still disappointing this week to see all the partying going on in New Orleans and know how much fun that is. But it's also great because they bust out guys like Joe Montana. And we're going to share the screen here. Joe was on television, and our good friend Coach Yak has put this out on his Twitter. He was on the Rich Eisen show. Listen to what Montana said here. It's pretty good stuff. And then we'll talk a little bit about it here. Let me pop that up, move that over. Here we go.
What do you think the Niners should do with Brock Purdy?
You got to pay him. I can show you 4 or 5 guys in the league making tons of money that haven't produced anywhere near what he's been able to do. And they just had one of those years where guys are getting hurt offensively, defensively. Craziness in the beginning of the year with, the talking trades with the wide receiver, and then he gets hurt. They just had one of those years you just can't wait to get behind you.
Yeah, just chalk it up to that.
Move on.
But you think Purdy is the quarterback of the future, pay him? And
yeah, I think he's got a good understanding. I think one of the things, I thought they pressed a little bit towards the end every time they got behind. So you saw Purdy get sacked more times. First of all, you got some offensive linemen who are hurt. And so now you're making him hold the ball longer. And sometimes, I don't know, it's only on TV that I can see, and which I hate to make that judgment. But when the guy gets sacked and I can't see a wide receiver or any receiver on the screen, it looks like they're trying to push the ball down the field, and that's not what they do. That's not typically what they do.
Yeah, it was just right from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
McCaffrey's not playing.
Yeah.
He's got not one but 2 Achilles.
Yeah.
Injuries to deal with. It was just wasn't their year.
Kind of a depressing soundbite, by the way. I don't want to, But I mean, seriously, that was a little depressing just because, it was the truth, but the truth hurts, huh? I mean, hearing it from Joe, it really hurts.
Yeah, I mean, this season was bleak in so many different ways, and I think you get to the core of the problem, and you want to talk about he's oversimplifying it, and TV copies don't really explain everything that's going on. But yeah, I think Brock at the end of games definitely pressed, and the offense itself was dysfunctional, and I could break down all the different ways with protections and offensive line, just not having the right dudes and schematic answers. I think they bet the whole season on McCaffrey coming back and fixing everything, and then he came back for 3 games basically, and it didn't solve anything. And then they didn't have schematic answers to answer it, and then they didn't have the dudes to answer it, and it seemed like they were out of answers way too early on. And for an offense and a head coach in Kyle Shanahan that is known for being creative, it felt like they were sort of stunted this year. And the offensive line is obviously a massive issue.
I just think that it's really not just the offensive line. I agree it is the offensive line. It's a major part. They need a new center. They need a new guard. They need a new tackle. They need at least 3 good offensive linemen, I think, out of this draft. They got to keep adding to their mix. But and maybe start investing in some, a little bit bigger bodied guys, because the league seems to be going towards a little bit of a physical offensive lineman, a big bodied guy that also can move. Instead of just being able to move, you got to have sometimes guys who are 315, 320 that can move, not 285. But we'll see if they, what they bring in as far as their offensive line. Forrester likes guys who can move and athletes and that kind of thing. But it's going to be really interesting just to see what they do. But back to the Montana point, I thought the question was, or the point that he made was, you have to pay this guy, and it's like, of course, that's the only conclusion I think. They ultimately have to pay this guy. He's done a lot. I mean, the market's the market, and it sounds like from the whispers that we're getting, Jake, that it doesn't sound like these guys are headed towards elongated holdout situation that goes into the spring. But then you never know, because Parag's a tough negotiator, and this is, Kyle Strongen's biggest high profile named client, I believe, at least on the 49ers he is. And so, we'll see how rooted this thing gets. But to me, I saw somebody say about a month ago, a mediocre deal in the spring is going to be way, way, way better than the best deal in the summer.
Yeah, from a number of ways. One, you don't have the whole thing. It's like the 49ers didn't learn their lesson, where if you drag things out, one, it dents morale. That's just an obvious point. But also, you get guys who come into camp and they're not in camp. They're out of shape, and they're not in sync. And even if you stay as healthy as you can, you stay in shape, you're working out away from the team, if you miss any time in practice, let alone with your starting quarterback, it's going to take you time to ramp up. Kyle Shanahan, out of anybody, understands the value of training camp, and yet year after year, they drag these things out, and it becomes exhausting. These guys don't come in healthy, and they're not ready to go, because it's just different. When you get the pads on, when you're actually installing stuff, it's different. So from that perspective, and then obviously the earlier you get it done, the cheaper it's going to be. Now, one point with that, it's not actually going to cost them $50 million on the cap. I think people have a misunderstanding of that, whatever the number is, if it even ends up being quote unquote 60. The way these things get structured is Brock's going to cost $20 million, and then 25, or it's going to escalate and it'll get up. But remember, Jimmy Garoppolo, I want to say his first year was $38 million on the cap, and that was a concrete cap hit. They eventually restructured it later on, but Jimmy cost if I'm not mistaken, $38 million in his first year of that extension, which was a different time, and they wanted to front load it. But Brock is not going to cost that. He's going to cost half of that in his first year. So they're still going to have the ability to make moves and maneuver, and the cap keeps going up by at least $10 million every year. So they're still going to have flexibility. It's just going to get tougher once you pay the quarterback.
I do think it's probably, even though I'm sure they've mapped out all of it either way and what they're going to spend in free agency, but it would be nice to have the Purdy thing done before the beginning of free agency. To me, that seems like the ideal time to get it done. Then you at least know you have that. One, you can use that as an attraction maybe to a receiver who might want to play with Brock Purdy. Okay, there's that because you might need another receiver. I'm looking at that receiving core. I would say the most tricky position on this football team right now is that receiving core because of just the tenuous nature of Debo's situation. He's selling his home in the Bay Area, and there's lots of trade rumors, and then Ayuk's injury situation, and what is he going to be able to contribute this year? And then when you take those two guys away, man, this receiving core doesn't look nearly as dangerous, but they have other needs that might take priority. So I'd be very interested to know if where John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have wide receiver overall in their list of off-season, their to-do list, their needs personnel-wise.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because you don't know what Ayuk is going to be. You don't know what he's going to be day one. You don't know what he's going to be the rest of his career because it wasn't just an ACL. He tore, I think, ACL, MCL. I'm not sure if he tore his PCL, but it was more than just one. So it was pretty bad. And maybe he's back to full health, but you can't really bet on that. So I think it's malpractice for them to go in and just say, all right, day one, Ricky Pearsall. I'm a huge fan of Ricky Pearsall. He started to play his ass off down the stretch. I'm a firm believer in like what he brings to the table. But as much as like I love Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, like Debo is barely a wide receiver. Like he's a guy you put in his hands and he can still run with it, but he runs drag routes. You can use him on screens, and he's basically, I think, more of a running back than a wide receiver at this point. And outside of, Jennings and Pearsall, who can you count on to actually play the position of wide receiver? You don't have any answers. So I'm with you. I don't think that's going to be priority number 1, 2, or 3, but I do think it's going to have to be relatively high on the list in terms of maybe you just bring in a few veterans. And I know they have a few guys that they scooped up, some veterans there's like Russell Gage and they'll want to bring Chris Conley back and Isaiah Hodgins just as, flyers to have around. But I do think
I like Isaiah Hodgins quite a bit though. Yeah. But they do need another receiver, beyond those guys.
I'm with you. They absolutely need that.
Yeah. And the question is, what's out there? It's not a great receiver draft. Does Tedoroa McMillan fall to 11? Maybe 6'4", 210. I think he's going to run the 4.3s. I think he's probably going to go in the top 5.
I'm not even sure about him. Like, and I'm not saying he's not like a really talented wide receiver, but I don't know if he's actually running routes or just he's like, I see him and he's like he's a sick, like contested catch wide receiver with great length. And I think he's going to be successful. But in terms of the actual craft of playing the position, I think they might go like more like Iowa State. That kid, Jalen Noel, like who's more of like a crafty slot guy that you can find in like round 4. That almost feels like the route they'd go.
Interesting, because they met with Noel in Mobile, I believe. He was one of the receivers on the list of the guys that they met with. He played in combination with Jaden Higgins at Iowa State. Higgins was the big-bodied guy, 6'4", 215. Noel was the smaller guy. Both of them were incredibly productive, 80, 90 catches, 8, 9 touchdowns. They were an incredible tandem, and that's why Iowa State has such a good season. But yeah, you got McMillan, you got Luther Burden, the third from Missouri, you got Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, who showed this year he's really physical, and then you got Isaiah Bond from Texas, who can really run. Trey Harris from Ole Miss is probably the best receiver, I think, in the draft that I've seen at least. But other people like these other guys. Jack Betch just had a great Mobile. He was the story of Mobile, the TCU receiver, sadly, whose brother got killed in that tragedy in New Orleans on New Year's Day. Betch is like devoted his career to him, and he just looks amazing. That guy's just fighting for every ball. It's he's going to have a very interesting NFL career. There's Savion Williams from TCU, Ricky White from UNLV. I mean, there's a few guys. Pat Bryant from Illinois. I mean, there's some decent receivers. But it's not a receiver draft like it's been in the past. That's for sure.
I'm with you. It feels like
there's not a lot of free agents either.
Yeah, it feels like the meat of it's in the middle. And I, as much as people mention like T. Higgins, like I don't see a world unless they like post June 1 Debo and trade him. I'm not sure how you make that work. I mean, listen, obviously adding T. Higgins would be great. It feels like that's sort of not where the priority is going to need to be for them. But I'm with you. I think in middle of the draft, third, fourth, I'm not even sure. I think they've got a fifth. They might be missing their sixth. But like that feels like the round they might look at receivers, sort of say start of day 3, very end of day 2.
Yeah. And, they've had a lot of success on day 3 of the draft. So let's see if maybe they could do it again. A lot of interesting talk about Myles Garrett. And you knew when the Niners went to the Super Bowl, the players were going to be asked about it. And sure enough, here it is. So let's share the screen on this one. This is a pretty good one. This is Fred Warner on with Kay Adams talking about Myles Garrett to the Niners. And that's always good stuff. Here we go. Here's Fred and Kay Adams.
A lot of talk about Myles Garrett. A lot of talk about, what is that face?
Because I'm like, rightfully so. It's Myles Garrett.
What is it? Would you welcome him?
Seems like he'd be using a lot of percent protein.
Well, y'all have a lot going on. Like, George needs to get paid. Brock needs to get extended. You got Hufanga. You got all these things. You need a DB.
Right.
Where is there room for Myles Garrett there?
There's always room for a Myles Garrett
Explain
on the
why.
team.
Explain why.
This is a Hall of Fame player.
Explain why.
Not just a Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it, and just a super soldier. You see him walking around here, he looks a lot different than a lot of these other cats that are walking around here.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that would even come about, how we would get that done, but I know there's some way, somehow we can figure that out.
Yeah, like John
Me
Lynch.
and George can just give a little bit of our funds over to Myles Garrett. How about that? How does that sound?
Now, you say that again. You're saying George.
I'm including George in the equation.
You're making such good money with the scent and Experian that you're going to give a paycheck to
Myles Garrett.
Myles.
That's
Okay, well, you heard it here first.
And in
That might
turn,
be the
we
best
get a Super
pitch.
Bowl.
Let me just say something for the record. George Kittle has never given up a cent of that paycheck. Out of anyone on the team, out of anyone on the team, George Kittle is not giving up that money. He works very hard for it, and he
needs a raise more than anything.
And no one is better and loves advertising more than George Kittle.
Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa bookends. I mean,
yeah, it'd be great.
What do you? I mean, here's the question. That's alluring, and it's very, very exciting. At the same time, when I think about what it's probably going to cost as far as draft picks, and then I'm thinking of this draft, it's like, you know what? This is the wrong draft to try to, get one great defensive lineman by trading all your picks or something. This is the draft to trade back into and get a bunch of defensive linemen in. There's some great defensive linemen in this draft. I really believe that. I know there's only one Myles Garrett, but let's be real about this. This is pro football. You can cover up for deficiencies a little bit here and there, and it's nice to have special players in special positions, but it's like you gotta be able to do it without giving away a ton of picks. So maybe you give away one high pick and you got to figure out a way to stagger it. Otherwise, you're really hurting yourself. I think that they could really build their line with a huge draft. I don't think I would go all in, especially because they went all in on the Lance thing and it bombed. Then they went all in on the Hargrave thing and it bombed. And it's like, you know what? You don't need to go all in again on one player. You need to have your 86 draft where you get 9 starters out of this draft and set yourself up to compete against these big bully teams and the stand between you and the Super Bowl, because suddenly the teams between the Niners and the ring have got it's a packed house. It used to be like a team or two, and now there's probably 10 teams that are sitting there that really could stand in front of them.
Yeah, the NFC is. Yeah,
I mean,
the NFC
count.
is.
You got Kansas City,
open.
Baltimore,
right?
Houston,
but from their perspective,
Buffalo,
it's you got one team.
That's in the AFC.
Right. You're going to have to beat one team, and really it's the Chiefs, and you bet on the Chiefs, and everyone else you say, all right, we can figure that out as long as it's not the Chiefs, but it'll probably be the Chiefs, and you'll probably never beat them. But the NFC, it's like to get to the game, I think it's wide open. They have the talent. To me, it depends on would the Browns actually consider trading him. They seem to say no. I think they should. I mean, they're not going anywhere. But if they do trade him before June 1st, they have to eat like an additional, like it costs them another $16 million on the cap to not have him. But if the 49ers were to get him, his base salary is like $1 million. So he's basically free for the next 2 years. So if I'm the 49ers, like, would I give up a first and second for Myles Garrett? Absolutely. I would give up number 11 and number 43 in a heartbeat for Myles Garrett. If it's more than that, if it's like another one after, I don't know. I don't know if I would do that. But I think if you have the chance to get him, I mean, that's a transcendent player. You've not really found a clear answer opposite Nick Bosa. And obviously they invested a lot of funds in Yetur Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd and the ghost of Drake Jackson, wherever he is. But
he just had a knee procedure. He's trying to make his way back. I would say it's the biggest, year of his career. If some people don't believe in him, but I actually think Jackson could get right and could contribute, but it hasn't happened so far. He needs to get a lot stronger.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on anything. It feels like D Ford. Like if you get anything from him, that's a positive. But if you can get Myles Garrett and he costs $1 million, it's a different thing if he's like costing you, where Joey Bosa, when that came around, he would have been like $20 million on the cap. If he's $1 million and you can get him for a first and a second, obviously you do it. But I think a bunch of other teams would be willing to do that because it's Myles Garrett, arguably the best defensive player in the league. I just don't think the Browns are going to want to do that. And so the whole thing is moot.
Yeah. You don't think they're going to move him, period?
I don't know. I mean, it depends. They're a pretty stubborn organization.
Yeah.
If I was them, I would say burn it all to the ground. You've got that terrible person as your quarterback, and just sort of say we're gonna intentionally suck. We're just gonna eat a lot of dead money this year, and we're gonna rebuild and get a haul for Myles Garrett. I think that's what they should do. I think they won't do that because Myles Garrett is, the one thing they have on their team that they can rely on.
Well, if you're the 49ers, I think you have to keep yourself in the loop on this conversation. Figure out if you stay in the deal flow, figure out if you can afford this player, both on the cap and in this in a trade, and then try to keep your finger on it, figure out where he's going because, or start really scouting offensive tackles because somebody's going to have to block Myles Garrett. And if he winds up in the division opposite Jared Verse, the Niners are going to be in deep problems. So with their offensive tackles and that defensive end combo, Brock Purdy's health is very much in question. But we'll talk more about that as we get closer to free agency and the draft. All right, the live stream sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. That's right. We're going to do that right now. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get that first deposit matched up to $200. Everyone who does automatically is entered into the drawing to win the Ricky Pearsall signed 14 jersey. We will announce the winner on Super Bowl Sunday in the post game. All right. Let's pick some categories. Dieter is usually our Thursday night guy, and Dieter is pretty good at this. But Jake might be more analytical and more maybe better.
You mean I'm going to overthink it? We'll see.
I have a feeling that you're going to do really well on this. All right. You play individual fantasy. So is there a player that you like in this game that you want to project. I'm projecting, I don't know, we haven't talked, but I'm projecting Spags' defense to slow down the Eagles' offense.
I was going right there. I was going the under on whatever Saquon is at. He might rip one off, and you might have to just take that L. But Spags and those guys up front are tough. I also saw Tershawn Wharton. I'm a big fan of him. I don't know about a sack, but if there's a multiple tackle prop on Tershawn Wharton, I'm all over that.
I don't think there's any Tershawn Wharton props. We'll look, but this is the Barkley file. 113.5 rush yards. That's a high number against the Chiefs, I think. Now, even if you liked Philly to maybe win the game, I mean, you could think Philly's going to win the game and Barkley's going to run for 90. I don't think all tickets to success for the Eagles mean he's north of that number. That seems like a high number to me.
I'm still taking the under on that. Listen, Spags, one of his great traits and what makes him such an elite coordinator is that he identifies what makes you so dynamic, and he takes that away. He played man coverage against the 49ers relentlessly and said Deebo Samuel's barely a receiver, and he put Trent McDuffie on him, and he locked him up. And the 49ers had no answer, and they didn't evolve, and they didn't adapt their strategy at halftime, and they lost. And they lost the Super Bowl largely because of that. Largely because of protections, which Spags also exploited, and he exploited against the Texans. The whole Shanahan tree is problematic with protections. I think, again, Spags is going to look at the Eagles and say, we're going to try and dare Jalen Hurts to play quarterback, and we're going to just focus on Saquon and try and limit him, and whatever else happens is fine.
Who do you think is going to win?
Chiefs.
How
can I not take the Chiefs?
I was getting that vibe. Give me Kareem Hunt. Let's see Kareem Hunt, because Kareem Hunt is a gamer. Like him, hate him, whatever. He plays big in big games. Does he have a touchdown thing on here?
43.5. That's a really.
I like the longest catch at 6.5 more. All it takes is one screen pass to Kareem Hunt for 7 yards. That's totally going to happen. Give me that. Give me Kareem Hunt for more than 6.5 receiving yards. All right, so we got those two. I don't think Fangio's defense has given up, a bunch of stuff to Xavier Worthy. Do you?
They might.
He's going up top. I mean, this is the one I see. I think Kansas City's defense slows down Philly, but I think Philly's defense slows down Mahomes. And that I like the under in this game.
I'm with you on that. I do think there is something to Xavier Worthy being used. They used Mecole Hardman, who did nothing basically all of last year, and then he destroyed the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Worthy on intermediate passing, just on outs and those little annoying quick passes they do. I don't know about what are his targets at?
His reception 7.5. You think they're going to go to him a bunch? I think that might be a high number.
That is a high number. That's not a number that's super appealing to me.
Let's see Kelce for a sec. Let's go to Kelce, because I think Travis Kelce's interesting. He's always big in big games. He's always big, it seems like, in the Super Bowl. 8.5 receptions is
those are some brutally high numbers. It's like that's expecting the Chiefs to throw it, 30 something times.
How about this one? I see one that I like. 8.5 targets, because they're going to go to. He's going to be going. He's going to go to him for sure. And the one thing about the Chiefs receivers this year, they're not great, and their wide receivers are not great. And
that feels like one you're going
to
sweat.
They manufacture all this short yardage stuff where other teams run it. They manufacture passes to Kelce, and for that, I'm going over. I'm going over.
Yeah, that one feels like a sweat to me. Like he's going to have 2 targets in the first half, and then the second, they might throw it to him 10 times. And then you end up right. Like if they go to work,
that doesn't matter if Philly wins or loses there. It's like, you know what? They're going to target him. I mean, like I think the targets are for sure. I don't know about the completions though, because I think the defense is going to be really good.
Yeah, I want to be with you on that. That 8.5. It does feel like though the game is going to slow down and the Chiefs are going to both teams are going to end up punting, and so they're going to have more possessions, and so you're going to have a lot of like dink and dunk attempts to Kelce where he might have 5 targets on one drive. I begrudgingly am with you on the Travis Kelce targets. I don't feel good about it, and I
give
do
me
feel
one
like that's
good
one
one.
You're going to sweat.
Give me one more. We'll add one more. We'll add a Jake Hutchinson special.
You got to pull up Tershawn Wharton for me if he's on there. I'm not. I just need to see what the props are for Tershawn Wharton. I saw his name at some point, and listen, it's probably going to only be sacks, and I don't love it, but I just
going to be in there.
There he goes. There he is.
Where is
Tershawn Wharton sacks?
Let's go with a Tershawn Wharton sack.
I kind of love it. I just love Tershawn Wharton so much, and I do feel like it's something where you put a lot of focus on Chris Jones, and then Tershawn Wharton is just going to have one where, he's running. Jalen Hurts is running for his life, and Wharton has the ability to chase him down.
It's going to make it a big, juicy payout, too, because it's like, it's low percentage. But let's try it. Let's go with it. A 4-pick.
I hope that just ruined the entire slip.
Yeah, we get 19-1 on that. We're getting 19 times our money on a $20 bet. There you go. Let's put it in there. Let me screenshot that. Let's save that. I want to make sure I remember that. Barkley, 113.5 rush yards. Do I have to write this down? I may have to actually write this down. Otherwise, I won't be able to come back to this. 113.5 rush yards for Barkley. Okay. Hunt, 6.5 yards longest catch, which is, I think, no doubter. Kelce, 8.5 targets. Over in that one. And then Tershawn Wharton. Who else has money on Tershawn Wharton?
Probably not a single soul. I will tell you, I'm gonna go insane if he gets a sack, and I feel it in my soul right now.
I feel like we won't even have Jake and I won't even be at the same Super Bowl party, but we'll be like brothers on Tershawn Wharton sack. That guy. I'm seriously texting you in the middle of wherever I am.
100%.
If Tershawn Wharton gets a sack, dude, that is awesome. All right, there we go, 4 for 4. And thanks to Better, everyone who signs up automatically entered into a drawing to win the free signed for Ricky Pearsall jersey. We'll announce the winner in the post game after Super Bowl Sunday. Download the app. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get that first deposit matched up to $200. Better, thanks to Better, the live stream sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Thank you, Better. All right, that's fun. I was heavy on the Eagles to win early. The more we get closer to this game and the Eagles have illness, they have guys who aren't practicing, they seem like they've had injuries. Everything seems like aligned for this, this coronation of the Chiefs. I feel like the league is leaning into it. I hope there are no bad calls that go in that direction. But said like the NFL contacted Pat Riley about the three-peat thing, and it's like, obviously.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Because he owns all the trademarks to that?
He owns the trademarks.
That man's a sick individual, and I respect the hell out of him.
Oh, dude, when I was in 1990, I bought a gray Niner T-shirt with red writing that said the Niners will three-peat, and wore it basically every Sunday, and it was a hit until they didn't win the game, until Roger Craig fumbled, and then all of a sudden it was like, I just thought about that shirt, and I was like, oh, I can never wear this shirt again.
That's tough.
It was tough. It was a tough moment.
That's like occasionally. I grew up in New Jersey, and I'm at my mom's place right now, and in her closet, sometimes you'll be looking for something, and then I'll get a jump scare from a Mark Sanchez jersey, just the bright green number 6, and
butt fumble.
Yeah, I just have flashbacks to the butt fumble, and then I have flashbacks to directing him in the parking lot to a 49ers Chargers preseason practice, which is a real
awesome.
full circle moment for your boy.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Jake Hutchinson in the house. Dieter, by the way, congratulations to Dieter. Dieter having a child, and congratulations to Dieter, and his wife. And that's we won't give any of his details away on.
But all went well.
YouTube,
all went well. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, everybody great doing. We wish nothing but great things for Dieter and his young family. And Jake was kind enough to stop by tonight, and we're really excited to have him. And Jake and I talk so much ball because both of us cover the Niners. We're sitting down there all summer in the heat, just chopping it up almost every day. So one guy that we both love to talk to is George Kittle, and I'll share the screen here. Kittle talking today about his contract with our friend Brad Graham, and listen to Kittle here.
The streets are saying you might be in some negotiations. What would it mean to you to be a 49er for your entire career?
My goal is to be a 49er for life. I love wearing the red and gold. I love the support from the faithful. So it'd mean the world to me. And it'd mean nothing more than to just play my entire career for the 49ers.
Dude, I appreciate it.
And it'd be covered by you.
The streets are saying you might.
No, there you go. He gave the Brad the good nod there as well. Brad Graham putting that out on his Twitter, and Brad went from Mobile to the Super Bowl. So he's been at Radio Row all week doing awesome work, and thanks to Brad for coming on KMBR earlier today. What do you think on the Kittle front, contract-wise? Is this something it sounds like there won't be too tough to negotiate? Sounds like he's giving away a lot of his leverage by saying, hey, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here. I'm not sure if that's the best way to guarantee the most money, but if that's not what he cares, he's making money. He, unlike others, is making probably a pretty good penny off the field, and probably will continue to. So he's got that revenue that not every player has.
I would say with Kittle, he's got plenty of leverage. You can just look at Cam Latu. That was their last draft pick at tight end. This team can't draft tight ends. The best draft pick they've had outside of George Kittle was Charlie Warner, who's like okay and got $4 million. I think it's like a 3-year, $12 million deal from Atlanta. Decent little blocking tight end. We watched Charlie Warner. Like, he's okay.
He's
right?
dogged in his approach. He drives the legs and everything,
listen,
but he just never couldn't catch anything.
Right. He was like, it was like Ross Dwelley was the guy who could only make catches and couldn't block to save his life, and Warner was the inverse. But he wasn't like that dominant that you were like, okay, we have to keep him around. Kittle is like the linchpin of their offense. You cannot miss him. He's coming off a career year. He's a future Hall of Famer. You have no real leverage to not bring him back because you have zero answer at tight end. None whatsoever. And you haven't proven that you can draft one. You tried to get Brock Wright last year. You couldn't do it because the Lions kept him around. They don't really have another option. Like, you have to keep George Kittle around. And he can talk about it because he's comfortable and he knows what his worth is. And if they try and play hardball, it's not going to go over well for them. He knows what he's worth. I think he, again, as a guy that understands his value, cares a bit about the finances of the game. He's going to get what he's worth. And there's no better tight end in the game of football. He does everything well. I would say he slipped a little bit as a blocker, but he did so well as a receiver this year that it's hard to criticize. He's the only thing that worked in the red zone for him. So if I'm Kittle, I'm not sweating, putting it out there. I think he's got plenty of leverage to work with.
I'm telling you, the Niners have really struggled to pick tight ends. I watched them practice all year. I mean, Saubert gave them a little something. He's a veteran. He's okay, but not much. And and they just didn't have any. Mason Pline has some potential, but he's a converted basketball player, so they wanted to give him a full redshirt year, which I think he's going to show up and compete for a spot this summer. But the position is barren, and this draft is absolutely stacked with some fantastic tight ends. I've got to shout out a few here. Tyler Warren, Penn State, just a monster, like a Gronk. Colston Loveland from Michigan is just rare. I mean, this guy's fast and rangy and talented. Harold Fannin is both a dominating blocker and a prolific, productive receiver who caught a ton of balls at Bowling Green. The Arroyo kid from Miami just lit up the Senior Bowl, totally dominated that. There's Jason Taylor's kid, Mason Taylor, who's just a freakishly great athlete at 6'5", 250. Because Jason Taylor, of course, as you know, is one of the greatest athletes ever at like 6'6", 6'7", 230, and just ripped. And his son is just an incredible athlete. The Texas tight end, Gunnar Helm's a decent player. The Clemson tight end, Briningstool's a good player. The Oregon tight end, Ferguson's a good player. The Notre Dame tight end, Mitchell Evans, is a good player. I know people that love that Aronde Gadsden from Syracuse. Benjamin Urasek. I did the Stanford pregame show.
Mention. Solid,
Urasek
really
was
solid blocker.
Best player. And he's a good receiver, too. He's at Georgia. Some Caden Priestcorn from Ole Miss is gigantic and really, really good. The Georgia Tech tight end Hawes is a Yale transfer. Terrific player. Made some one-handed catches at the Senior Bowl. Rivaldo Fairweather has ridiculous long arms. It's like 99th percentile for wingspan, and is 6'3", 250. Not the fastest guy, but pretty good runner, pretty dependable receiver. Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech was the Arizona State transfer. Terrific player. I mean, there's a bunch. I mean, I didn't even name them all, but I mean, that's a lot. They got to get themselves at least one or two good tight ends in this draft. It's just so full of tight ends.
I'm absolutely with you. There's a ton. You mentioned most of them. I remember just briefly, and this is rough to say about Cam Latu. Yeah, Larry, it just becomes naming some dudes, and I kind of love that. It's kind of my favorite segment. It's like when I talk about my favorite Mets players, and I get to Jeremy Burnitz, and people are like, "Can you stop?" But like when they drafted Cam Latu, I remember grinding tight ends in that draft, and I was like really going down the tape, and there's some guys I'm like, he's got some receiving potential, but he's a weak blocker, vice versa. A lot of guys you could latch onto. Cam Latu was the only guy I had in red that said, no, I don't see it. Round late day 3 pick, and they took him round 3. And so you would hope they learn from that, but it doesn't give me confidence that they know how to evaluate the tight end position. So there's a lot of talent there. I think they have to value that, but I do think they need to maybe reevaluate what they're looking for in a tight end. If you're just looking for a guy who can receive, great. If you're just looking for a blocker, great. You need at least one really solid trait to latch onto, and I don't think Latu had any. And you can't go for a guy who's like okay at a lot of things. Go for a guy who's great at least one thing and has upside in other areas. And a lot of those guys you mentioned have that.
We're going to share the screen on this one. This is from Coach Yak's Twitter. This is Fred Warner on with Diana Rossini talking Brock Purdy. This is pretty good little soundbite here. I don't know if you're familiar with this one, but Diana Rossini, of course, what does she work with? The Athletic, I believe?
Yeah. She's great. I almost ended up working with her. But.
Okay.
What is it about Brock Purdy that maybe people outside of the 49ers don't really understand what makes him so good?
Well, I mean, the thing is like if you truly watch the tape and you watch all the other elite quarterbacks in this league, they all have a common thread amongst all of them, and the fact that they're able to process the game at such a high level, being able to create plays with their feet, make the high-level throws up and down the field. Brock Purdy does all these things, and he was in the MVP conversation a year ago. Like, let's not forget that. He took us to a Super Bowl, and he gave us the lead before, obviously, Patrick Mahomes and them took it away from us in that Super Bowl, right? So this is the guy. Like, there's no question. Everybody out there, if you have any questions about Brock Purdy, I'm here to tell you I'm not biased. I know ball. He's the guy.
Wow. I'm not biased. I know ball. I mean,
right.
You're an NFL all-pro linebacker. You don't have to say that. That's like something I would
funny.
say.
Yeah, I'm not biased. I mean,
I'm not biased. Hey, look, guys, I know ball. I'm not biased. Brock, Fred's got to say that?
You can know ball and also be biased.
Wow.
By definition, you are biased. He's your quarterback. Listen, it's I guess it's cute how everyone defends Purdy, but I think it is sincere. Like, I think the worrying thing last year was that it felt like his superpower was processing the game, and because of all the dysfunction with the offensive line, because they handled blitzes terribly, their protections were either set poorly or they didn't pick things up right. And when those things were actually set up well, especially early on, the receivers weren't separating and the timing wasn't right. And then it felt like Brock wasn't trusting things because he didn't get to work with Ayuk in the offseason. He didn't get to work with Pearsall in the offseason. So they funneled everything through Jennings, who is not an ex-receiver. I love Juwan Jennings. Great player, great receiver, should not be playing on the outside. Like, he is a slot receiver, and he's excellent at it. And listen, he played well and he produced on the outside, but you're limited in how you can run an offense because he can't take the top off of defense. He's like a bottom 25 percentile athlete. That's just the reality of it, and that's not a criticism. It's a fact. I'm not biased. I know ball. Like, that's the reality of Juwan Jennings as a player. And so when you're trying to put pieces in spots that don't work and the offense is dysfunctional and you don't have schematic answers to blitzes where teams would overload one side and bring simulated pressure, and you don't have the dudes at center and left guard to answer some of those things when you do have the right play call, it's just there's a lot that didn't work and that Brock seemed to trust less and less as the season went. And so for me, I still think he's a fantastic quarterback, probably like top 10 at the very least, like on the fringe, whatever. Rankings are fluid and they change how they change. But he's an elite processor. He has the things that Jimmy lacked, where he could push the ball deep and he could play make off schedule when there's pressure in his face. Jimmy didn't have that, and Brock immediately brought those two things. And Kyle actually trusts him and has discussions with him about how they want to evolve the offense. So I think a lot of the Purdy discussion is tired, and you could admit that his arm is limited, that he doesn't have the ability to fire into tight windows and take like a whole shot, against cover two that Justin Herbert or, a lot of these other quarterbacks could do. But he's still a great quarterback, and you got to pay him.
Yeah. And it's the thing that, I've noticed about him just watching some other guys this year at times is just he does have the juice to be able to spurt away as a runner. And that, is he an awesome runner like Lamar? No, he's not that. He's not that kind of a runner. But he does have him and Mahomes. I would say this is one area they really do share the same trait. They both have that escapability. And how fast is that? It's as fast as it needs to be for 3 or 4 steps, and they can escape. Now, they're not going to outrun anybody, especially Mahomes at this point, but Purdy can make some plays with his legs, and if there's money on the table and he's got a good enough team around him, he can run for those yards that Steve Young talks about that you have to be able to take in the biggest moments of an NFL game, and I think that makes him championship caliber. I also felt like the way he played at such a young age at the beginning of that Super Bowl shows the poise, and he's not the best quarterback in the league, but and if I were the Niners, I'd keep looking for great quarterbacks, but I also would say goodbye to Dobbs, say goodbye to Allen, bring Brock back with Tanner Mordecai and either a rookie that I really love or a Joe Flacco, somebody with a big arm like that, a backup, a veteran backup with a big arm, or a rookie, Tyler Shugg.
That's exactly what I was going to mention. Yeah, really
Tyler
interesting
Shugg.
guy.
He's got, he's like a 7-year player, okay? This guy started at Oregon. I think I might have only had 2 kids at the time.
Who was the Oklahoma State guy who was 30 years old when he got drafted in the first round?
Brandon Weeden.
Yeah,
that
awesome.
guy. Yeah. Or Chris Winkie. Chris Winkie was 29 at Florida State, his final year there. some of these guys just play and play and play. But this guy, Tyler Shugg, 6'5", 225, played at Texas Tech, played at Oregon, finished this year at Louisville. He's got a rocket of an arm and can actually move a little bit. But the guy is 6'5", 225 with kind of a laser. He's not a runner, but he is interesting.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I do think the 49ers have plenty of draft picks. I think they're going to have 9 or 10, something like that, depending on how the compensatories come in. They got chances where I think late in the draft, maybe, and Shugg feels like a guy who's going to be in like the 3rd round, maybe the 4th, but I do think there is something to every year when you find a guy you like who's undervalued at quarterback. It's weird where like the top guys go and then there's just quarterbacks hanging around in the last day 3. There's always guys you can find, and taking a bite of that apple, it doesn't hurt. Like, yeah, you can totally whiff, but the upside is like finding a guy who could be a backup quarterback or your future starter, or at least push your starter and give you some leverage against it.
So it's basically 32 players per round. So roughly 100 players of the first 3 rounds. So day 3 is everybody that's after 120 after all the extra picks or whatever, at the end of the 3rd round. So maybe you got 120, 130 picks go in the first 2 days. And then the rest of it, everything from 120 to the back of the draft, are day 3 quarterbacks. Well, the quarterback market this year, it shows Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. Some people think Quinn Ewers might go in the 1st round, but probably not. Jalen Milroe looked terrible at the Senior Bowl and has small hands, but he's a great athlete and had a lot of success at Alabama. Then there's Jackson Dart. A lot of people think Jackson Dart could go in the 1st round. Will Howard won the national championship at Ohio State. Some people like Curtis
Will Howard,
Rourke.
Man. Kind of like Will Howard. I know
I know a lot of people do because he's big and fast. He started at K-State. He can run. He's got a good arm. He had awesome weapons, but don't hold that against him. He's kind of fiery and he's interesting. Yeah, he's interesting. There's Riley Leonard. He's
basically a running back.
Yeah, he's kind of a running back. You're right. There's Kyle McCord. There's Tyler Shugg. There was Brady Cook from Missouri. I thought the guy in the All-Star game that looked pretty good to me was Seth Hennigan from Memphis, who got the game-winning touchdown pass at the end. There's Peyton Thorne from Auburn, who can run really well. So, Cam Miller, North Dakota State.
Yeah,
there's interesting quarterbacks. It's not a vintage year.
Yeah, it's not. And it's funny because Jackson Dart's a guy that people are like, oh my God, this might be the guy. I just can't get over the first Jackson Dart game I watched at Ole Miss. Sick Ole Miss roster, by the way. They spent a lot of money on that team.
Awesome.
They got some awesome dudes. Walter Nolan and J.J. Pegues right in the middle of that defense. Unbelievable. And yet Jackson Dart, I watched I forget what game it was, but he basically threw 3 interceptions in a row, and 2 of them got called back. And he kept getting chance after chance, and he just was insistent on throwing an interception to lose the game. And it's pretty hard for me to get over that. But he is intriguing. He's got a lot of tools.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. Give me one. There's a lot of people throwing out a bunch of names, both free agency and the draft. I'm not hate. I know I'm all here for it. I ain't hating on it at all. It's just people talking about their favorite team, right? So this is the time of the year where people are like, "Hey, man, can the Niners get this guy?" I probably get that question, as you would imagine, about 27 times a day. But I'm all here for it. Chase Senior. I'm looking at Chase Senior's thing because he actually had a kind of an interesting thing, but guy tweets out so many freaking things. I gotta. I forgot the guy's at the Super Bowl, so he's got 19,000 Eagles things, but he did have a thing saying who he would want to sign as free agents, and one of them I think was Drew Dahlman.
Yep, that's a guy
who
I mentioned.
Here it is. He has Drew Dahlman. He has DJ Jones, Jamie Sherwood, DJ Reed, Javon Holland. But here's my one question for you: I'm going to let you get one free agent and one draft pick to add to this team. Who's your one free agent? Who's your one draft pick? And it doesn't have to be, hey, I got it. They got to get this guy at 11. It could be, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
They got to
I
get
got
this
it,
guy at some point on day 3, whatever. But one draft pick, one free agent to improve the Niners. Who do you got?
Free agent, have said it for months, Drew Dahlman. Jake Brendel is a guy who played well for his contract, but he's had some knee issues, and I do think they need a guy who just has way more athleticism, has the ability to handle when there's stunts, especially, and there's complicated blitz pickups, a guy who can handle both. And Dahlman is a guy that started his foundation as a run defender. Obviously, his dad played center for the 49ers, but like him alone, he's a guy the 49ers had interest in, but he was in that same draft as Aaron Banks and Creed Humphrey. Hey, folks, remember when the 49ers drafted Aaron Banks over Creed Humphrey? Remember that? As if that wasn't a glaring mistake at the time. Anyway, Dahlman went to Atlanta, and he started off as just like an okay pass blocker and a really good run blocker. He's remained a really great run blocker while also improving in pass protection. He's 26. He's super athletic. I just think like he's a perfect, if you're going to go after any free agent, he is at the right age. He is a perfect fit for exactly what the 49ers look for in a center. He's going to understand it. He's going to get in the scheme. And he's a perfect fit there. I've said it for months. And the price tag will be interesting. It'll probably be 12 to 15. I think if it gets up to 15, they'll probably be out. But he's a really damn good player and would be a significant upgrade over Jake Brendel. Would they just say Brendel's cheap and he's okay and we can upgrade at left guard and move other pieces around? Maybe. But if it's me, I'm getting Drew Dahlman. Number 2, you want to talk about draft picks? Vernon Broughton, defensive tackle out of Texas. He is a stud. People talk about there's the other defensive tackle, Alfred Collins, out of Texas. I think Broughton is a way, way more well-rounded player than Alfred Collins. He is stout. He's super physical. He can anchor in the run game and hold up against double teams, which I think is the number one thing the 49ers failed to have in a defensive tackle. They keep getting these like gap-splitting dudes like Javon Hargrave who cannot hold up in a gap in the run game. It's like you need to have fundamentals before you rush the passer. Broughton has the size and the physicality to do that, and I think he's got crazy strong and quick hands. Like you saw him against Ohio State. He was wrecking the game. He was a problem. I just think he's an incredibly well-rounded, very undervalued player who, like, on some boards, I think ESPN had him as like the 15th defensive tackle, which is insane to me. I would feel extremely comfortable drafting him in round 3. I think he is a flat-out dude who's going to produce from day one.
Good one. I'll go free agency. I'm going to go T. Higgins. I just think that they have to have a receiver who's big time, and none of their receivers are headed on that trajectory. So you can bury your head in the sand and pretend that's not the case, or you can go do something about it. And I'd go do something about it. And to me, the draft options are more about future. I do like the tiny Oregon guy, Tez Johnson, but he's tiny, and that they just need a bigger. That's a gadget player. That guy's not going to be healthy. But I do think T. Higgins would be my free agent just because of the options in the draft are just not there, and I think they need a significant player at receiver. And I think Higgins showed at the end of the year that he is a true number 1. He's just kind of hiding in the shadow of Jamar Chase. So that's the free agent. I love Drew Dahlman, don't get me wrong. I just think that my favorite player in the draft is the North Carolina center who's 5'10", 285.
I want to love him. That guy's
awesome, man. He's just absolutely amazing. He's just an amazing center. And he just holds up guys left and right. I also love Marcus Ware, who's terrific. But I would say my guy in the draft, if I had to say one guy, to me, the position I love to scout or watch or, are the linebackers, because to me, that's where the Niners really have to be back to where they were, where they had a Z's and Dre, a young Dre and a young Fred, and they were rocking and rolling and dominating in that second level. And just those guys, it's amazing how fast it goes because these guys have so many collisions. The Bowman-Willis duo petered out way, way faster than I ever thought it would because those guys hit like trucks and they just got involved in some terrible injuries. We all know how it ended. But there's a guy from Memphis named a linebacker named Chandler Martin. And, he's 6 feet 230, and he's just absolutely incredible. And he's a academic honor roll player. He's super smart. He's a first team all conference player. He's a tone setter. The guy's, he's one of like 9 players that they had who played like every single game of his career. It's like the guy had 5 tackles for loss in the Liberty Bowl alone. I mean, it's like the guy is just an amazing player, honor roll student, incredible athlete, team captain, full-time team captain his entire time at Memphis, and he's like a magnet to the football. You can't block this guy. He's just undeniable. Chandler Martin from Memphis. Go watch him. You'll be glad that you did. All right, a couple supers here. Clawdaddy Arcades, who's sponsoring our trip to spring training, and we're going to spring training in the month of March. We're really fired up. We'll be in Scottsdale in the month of March, and if you would like to sponsor our trip to spring training, we do have 2 sponsorships available. If anybody wants to sponsor, please just reach out and contact us. And if it's a product that we don't already have, advertised on our show currently, we can potentially make it happen. So anyway, thanks to everybody who's already reached out to sponsor our show and, of course, our trip to spring training. But Clawdaddy Arcade says, I'm a little worried about our wide receiver room as well, LK. Trade the 4th and 5th for Debo. Grab Darius Slayton and or draft the wide receiver Restrepo from Miami, who's a really good receiver. You're talking about is his name Xavier Restrepo?
He's a little bit like
nice.
Braxton Berrios. Obviously, he's like, from Miami, but he's like that crafty little slot receiver who's going to annoy the hell out of you because he's just
hands.
Really tough to cover underneath. Great hands. You can probably use him as a punt returner. He's tricky.
Yeah. He's and I've seen people think he's going in the second round. He's 5'9", he's 200 pounds, he's incredibly productive. He's like one of these guys. I mean, the top slot receivers are Tez, Restrepo, and the guy that you just talked about, Jalen Noel from Iowa State. Those are considered the top guys. I mean, Jamal Pritchett from South Alabama and Mario Williams, the USC kid who transferred to Tulane. Those guys are big time too, but we'll see come draft weekend where everybody falls. A couple last ones though. So I'm going as far as it is Super Bowl week. So I feel like almost like I have to ask you this question. What is, and I'm going to use a word in particular. I'm going to go with best, okay? Because best is totally subjective. Yeah, we're not saying this is the greatest team of all time, but what is the best 49ers Super Bowl? They played in 16, 19, 23, 24, 29 as victors, and they played in Super Bowl 47, 54, and now 58 as losers. What was the best, most entertaining 49ers Super Bowl?
I mean, I'm going back to, I was watching, I can't remember if it was, my gut says 94. And I miss the fact that you used to have running backs where they would be in a 3-point stance, and they'd be, it's just that like offset running back formation, and the way they would run stuff. That to me was like kind of the most entertaining thing. I know that's like a psychotic answer, but watching Jerry Rice and some of that old tape and just seeing like the way defenses used to run and how like motions kind of existed, but they were all funky and they were really fully sideways. Yeah, maybe it's that first Bengals one I'm thinking of. That is, I think that's my gut.
I mean, it's tough because these are all so entertaining. The only one I was ever at was Super Bowl 47 in New Orleans, Niners Ravens, for the actual Super Bowl itself. And that's when the lights went out and the whole deal against the Ravens. It was a thrilling game, but it was maddening the way it ended. And the terrible calls against the non-Bruce Miller call on the terrible hold on the Jacoby Jones 100-yard return. As you can tell, I'm still not over it. But I would say Super Bowl 23 was the best game. Montana finding Taylor in the back of the end zone. They beat a killer Bengals team that was awesome. That Bengals team in Super Bowl 23 was quite a bit better than the Dolphins in 84, quite a bit better than the Bengals version with Ken Anderson in 81, quite a bit better than Denver, I think, the next year.
Those Bengals jerseys back then, man, they were awesome.
That was a great team. David Fulcher and they had just tons of talent. I mean, that was an amazing. That was the beginning of Munoz. I mean, Munoz was a young guy at that point.
Greatest tackle
Munoz
of all
was
time.
a young guy in 81, I should say. He was a veteran at that point.
Yeah, that was that's my gut. I was at the Miami Super Bowl. I left town before the Vegas Super Bowl because I knew how much of a disaster it was going to be, and I didn't even know if I was going to be able to see it in the stadium. I was like, I'd rather be home and get out of Vegas, and just deal with this at home. But you should have done the show in a Ralph voice.
Tyler, Larry, do the rest of the show in the Ralph voice.
Krug, you're so cute. You get all mad about the Giants.
Ralph. I miss Ralph. I told you about did I ever tell you about my 6-bagger from Ralph?
No.
Oh, my Disneyland 6-bagger?
No, what was that?
Oh my God. So we had kids the same age. Okay. And he had taken his kid to Disneyland, and he's like,
Krug, if you go to Disneyland, make sure you consult me. I know that park like the back of my hand.
So he was like super intense about Disneyland, and he wanted to talk about it. We did the face-off, but I always had to do my show. Like, oh, Ralph, I'd love to hear more about Disneyland, but I got to do my show. I got to talk sports.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we'll talk about it another time. I'll leave you a message. Don't problem. No, not a big deal. I'll leave you a voicemail.
I'm like, all right, great. Leave me a voicemail. So I didn't even know how to even access my work voicemail. I mean, to be completely honest, only like maniacs ever left me voicemails. At work,
I only got one of them, and he told me to have Howard Stern on the radio. I was like, all right, I'll get on it.
I mean, it's a true wasted phone line. But anyway, I did leave a message. I did have a message thing in there. So anyway, I get to it. He's like,
Krug, I left you a bunch of messages.
So I go down. I can't figure out how to access it. I got to go to like HR, and I have to have like somebody in promotions help me access my voicemail. Then I finally access it, and it's like, you have 7 messages. And I'm like, I have 7 messages. And it was 6 of them. One was like somebody like, hey, would you volunteer for this? The 6 others were all Ralph. And he was just in his Ralph voice trying to tell,
Krug, okay, this is what you do. You go to Disneyland.
Every single one of them is Disneyland related.
It's all about Disneyland. And then he'd be like,
incredible.
Boop. Krug, sorry, I didn't get to finish, but let me just tell you, you go to Disneyland, you got to work from the back to the front. You get into the park, you take the tram. You get to the back of the park, you start working your way back. I'm telling you,
oh my God, this neurotic nut is just leaving me all these messages. I played it for Bob Agnew, our program director, and he's like, told the general manager, he's like, Sal, get down here. And then he's like, Kruger's got a 6-bagger from Barbieri on the voicemail about Disneyland. You got to hear this shit. Oh, it was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable moment.
That's unreal. That's like when I was my girlfriend was taking my car down to work from the city. And I was like, all right, when you get on the 101, you got to stay in this right lane because it merges here. And then when you get past the airport, you're going to want to be in this lane. And you're just like, it's these like horrible things, these mental maps you have memorized in your brain. And you kind of know, like, no one else wants to hear about it, but you force yourself upon them to be like, no, you got to do it this way. That's an awesome story.
Oh, Ralph.
The Disney princesses, they get a Fullerton, and I talked to a couple of them. Tate got their autograph. They're very nice.
Oh, my God. Stop.
Awesome.
Ralph, please stop.
You have to hit Downtown Disney. They have Goofy's Kitchen. It's a great breakfast. It's a little pricey.
So I get down there, and it's like eggs and like bacon for like $80. I'm like, thanks, Ralph. Thanks, Ralph, for that, for your $80 Disney breakfast.
That's unreal.
Craig, you're making memories.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I went to school down there, and there were some kids that would go every weekend, and I could never wrap my head around that.
Could you imagine fireworks going off at 8:30 every night in your neighborhood? That's what it would be like to live next to Disneyland. They have a fireworks show.
When I got my dog, he was like, as a puppy, he was fine with fireworks at first because he was used to them. And then at some point he forgot it, and now he's like deathly afraid. But for a while there, he was so used to the fireworks that they didn't bug him out. And then he lost it somewhere.
That's unbelievable. Jay Mill says, kinky women love Larry's Ralph voice. Oh, Jay Mill, get your head out of the gutter. All right, couple last thoughts before we bolt for the door. Here's one thing. I'm kind of tempted to not talk about this, but what the hell? I've already brought it up. Diana Rossini, the Athletics' Diana Rossini, she did a report that the Niners are committed to giving Purdy a new deal, right? And it sounds like they're planning to begin talks. I don't know if they have begun talks. She believes the 49ers are going to offer Purdy a contract that's somewhere between 55 and 60 million per year. She says Purdy just wants, what he's worth. So I don't know who she's talking to. Maybe the agent, maybe Brock himself. But I think this is probably going to get done. But I guess the basic question is, and I know there's Niner fans that don't agree with this or wouldn't. I guess I put out on Twitter the other day, I said, how much belief do you have in Purdy and his ability to get that sixth Lombardi for the Niners? And I said, by the way, have total unwavering belief that he will get it done. So I kind of influenced it a little bit. But the tweet got, last I checked, like 46,000 views over whatever amount of time. It had only 375 likes, and shows how little I'm liked. But it had 225 comments. And I went through and I looked at the comments because I wanted to talk about it on the radio. And like 101 were like, yes, Purdy will win Super Bowl number 6 for the Niners. 42 of them were like, no, he won't. He won't get it done. 49 were like basically saying he'll only get it done if the Niners improve their O-line, which is a lot of people to like just put, down that, the O-line is the issue. 11 put down only if the defense improves. And 16 put Kyle as the issue.
It's almost like there are multiple things that are wrong with this team.
Well, and just a couple of the comments that I thought were the good ones. One guy said if the O-line issues improve only. This guy named David Korth said my confidence is in direct proportion to Kyle Shanahan's investment in the Niners O-line. If Kyle continues to believe the O-line's unimportant, Brock and every other San Francisco quarterback will be on the IR. Another guy said he's too incredible. He's too incredible of a processor to not win. Another guy said, I love Brock, but sometimes he's ultra hyper aggressive. Another guy said, I believe more in Brock than Kyle, just a gut thing. And then one guy said, I love Purdy's best chance will be I love Purdy, his best chance to get a ring will be this upcoming season. So there you go. Those are a little bit of the feedback. But what do you think? If I asked you that question, how much belief do you have that Purdy is ultimately going to be there when the Niners get that 6th Lombardi Trophy victory?
I mean, if you want a percentage, it's tough because I think it depends on multiple things. I think for me, the biggest problem with them was their answers to man coverage and the way they set their protections. I think Purdy is not the problem with the team. So I think if they draft well, if they fix defensive tackle, number one, if they add other pieces elsewhere, if they add some depth at minimum to their offensive line, Salah coming back is monumental. And if they reevaluate a little bit how they call protections and maybe give Purdy the green light on certain third downs to say, all right, let you adjust the play. I mean, I asked him about it at the end of the season, and he said, I actually have talked to the coaches about ways we can improve getting plays in quicker, because part of the reason he can't adjust protections is like he has so much to check at the line of scrimmage and so much to get in order, and there's cans built in, and there's so many motions that to try and change a protection at the last second is borderline impossible. So they just need to.
He has the flexibility to change the protection.
Yeah, but he
doesn't.
doesn't.
Scrimmage.
But not really.
He has the flexibility to call the protections at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, but not really. Like, that's not the reality of it. Like, the reality is there are like 2 or 3 plays like built into every one of his calls, and so if he's actually going to change it, he needs the time to be able to get up to the line of scrimmage and have a play. He needs to diagnose what coverage is going in. He's sending a man in motion, and then the clock is ticking down. He doesn't really have time to go over and set the protections. And Kyle Shanahan has constantly talked about, like I give them that freedom, but really, like, I don't ask them to do that, because he references when Kirk Cousins did it, and he did it 3 times, and he couldn't, and he got it right like one of the times, and he was stressed out because there's so much built into every play. And there's so much
just
time
a lot
involved.
of choices. He's just paring down the choices and giving them basically a play that he knows fits the personnel grouping and the formation that he has called. Because there's 2 ways right there that you could make a mistake. You could call the right play in the wrong personnel grouping. You could have the right play, the wrong formation. So he's trying to eliminate and streamline the thing for the quarterback, so he has either the play that's called or an alternate play that goes with that same personnel grouping and that same formation,
right,
so that you don't have to move guys around because the clock is ticking and you don't have a lot of time. But he does have the ability to slide protection either way, and make that decision on every single pass play. So
but he doesn't really have
a mistake. It's a misstatement to say that this guy can't change protections at the line of scrimmage. He absolutely can.
He could. But it's like a theoretical thing. It's like he doesn't have the time, and that's not something they really ask him to do because he has to do so much else. He has to get everybody aligned. When a play ends, they're already at 25 seconds just to get the play in and break the huddle and get people out there. And then it's like checking, okay, what's the defense doing? Check. All right, are we canning? Are we staying? By then, you're down at best to 15 seconds. You have a motion. Like, that's if the play's going well. Most of the time, there's far less time than that to actually get it in. And so, theoretically, yes, he could change the protections. They're not asking him to do that, and he's not really doing that because he doesn't have the time to do it. And it's not something that they've built into how they run the offense. So I've talked to him multiple times, and he said, yes, he can, but he relies on Jake Brendel. Mostly it's the thing of he's just checking his math and making sure it's all right. And that's part of the process is he's going up and making sure it's okay. And if it looks like dire, I'm sure there's some times he's done it. It is very, very, very rare, and it's very hard for him to do that with the way it operates.
And yet he's done it. On more than one occasion, even
very
last
rarely.
year. But last year in the playoffs, he did it. Last year in the playoff run, he did it. Brock has never expressed publicly any frustration in what he is able to do at the line of scrimmage that I've heard that was directly fly in the Niners process. Fly in the face, like he doesn't like their process. He's never taken that tact. He's discussed their process, but he never has said, hey, you know what, this process in any way limits me. And if anything, I think he's gone out of his way to kind of say the other thing, just to make it seem like Shanahan is absolutely giving him, streamlining it, making it simple for him. So it's just to make it seem like it's not a good thing. I think Shanahan, if he were sitting here, would push back.
One, he's not going to disagree or he's always going to defend it. But two, I think he wants more on his plate. And if he is going to take him to the Super Bowl, they need to put more on his plate and evolve by allowing him to do that. And I'm really talking about like key third downs where they get like an overload blitz and then there's 2 free rushers, where at most you should have one, and it should always be, in my view, to where the quarterback can see them coming, not to their blind side. Because a lot of the time, the way it's designed, they're asking Brock to like fade away from pressure, which is an insane ask. I don't think he's like frustrated with their system fundamentally, but I do think when I asked him about it and he said, yeah, we can get quicker, I do think he recognizes there are areas for them to improve, be quicker in how they call plays, to allow him to diagnose more things before the line of scrimmage, because especially when things are imperfect, he needs to know what he's going up against. And a lot of the times this season, it felt like he had too much on his plate to be able to do that, because they missed training camp and they had guys in the wrong spots.
Couple more. Costco hot dog says, I ate at Cafe Du Monde before your story. Hilarious. I was talking about my powdered sugar experience at Cafe Du Monde in New Orleans. Claudaddy Arcade says, great show, fellas. Don't know Ralph, but I can only imagine him as a caricature drawing. Love the impersonation. Thank you, Claudaddy. Okay, I'm just going to ask, sometimes some of these things are more better in visual form. I know we have an audio audience sometimes. Some of the people watching, or some of the people are just hearing this, so this is not going to help them. But I'm just going to share the screen, and let me see if I can make that any bigger. I guess it's already pretty big. So there you go. Does anybody have a problem with anything that we're looking at here? Jake, do you have a problem with anything that we're seeing here? How many things can we find fault with in this particular picture?
So at least as far as the Eagles jersey is concerned,
what bothers you most about this picture?
They are represented by the same agent and they are good friends. I don't think it's a strong strategic move on Debo's part, but I can understand why he's wearing A.J. Brown's uniform and trying to rep his friend. I'm not going to comment on the other obvious flaws in the photo.
I mean, as somebody who also has kind of a boiler, that looks like a boiler, which for a wide receiver is just not a good look. The Eagles thing doesn't bother me.
He did say he was going to wait until after the Super Bowl to start working out.
Yeah.
That's literally what he said on the locker room clean out day.
He's a man of his word. Oh, wow. That's bad. Will Debo be a 49er in training camp?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is his last year with the team, and the uncertainty with Ayuk. They still have some uncertainty at running back, honestly. I'd say Kyle still loves Debo genuinely like a son. Like, that can't be understated. Kyle genuinely has a deep, good relationship with Debo. I think he'll stay around for one more year, and that'll be it.
Okay. Just for people who keeping up on the Niners, George Kittle wins the Salute to Service Award. Good for George. He's a good dude. CMC, according to healthy by next week, according to his father, Ed McCaffrey. So that's good news. That seems like it flies in the face of the whole chronic tendonitis in both Achilles report, but whatever. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, Matt Barrows proposed a Myles Garrett for a 25 first, a 26 first, and Jake Moody. Would you make that trade?
Did he actually put Jake Moody in there?
Yes. Jake Moody, a 25 first and a 26 first. So for the Niners, I mean, think about it. It's the 11th pick in the draft this year. They're hoping it's the 32nd pick in the draft next year. And your kicker for Myles Garrett.
I don't understand the point of Jake Moody. That has to be a bit.
I think he's from Ohio. I think that's what Matt said. Maybe I'll look that up. I thought he said Jake Moody's from Ohio.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I do. I guess I do.
Now the kicker who doesn't make field goals gets to call his shots.
I mean, listen, like if you're doing that trade, you're giving up one thing in the immediate term, and then you're just getting basically Myles Garrett for free this year because he costs $1 million on the cap. So if you're the 49ers and that's
now he's not from Ohio, he's from Michigan. So
I think you do that because even if it's 2 firsts, it's still 2 unknowns.
I know. I'm a big draft guy, so it's hard to give away that. But still, Myles Garrett is so special. You know, they tried this with D Ford. They almost got it done. They tried this.
Yeah, but D
They
Ford
tried
had
this, the last couple of years with
issues.
Leonard Floyd and different guys, and they've gotten close. Have Samson Ebukam. I mean, this is doing the best you can do if you go get Myles Garrett.
It's they've tried and they've tried and they've tried, and the best guy they had was probably Charles Omenihu, who's again, he's out there. That's going to be an option. But yeah, if it's this in next year's first, it's malpractice not to do that, because if you're literally it's $1 million in the cap. He's basically free. You're trading an unknown in this year's player, and then an unknown next year. That's probably that's going to be in the latter half of the first round. So if that was on the table, which it's not, of course you have to pull the trigger on that.
One other note, and this is kind of interesting. Pro Football Focus is reporting that the Lions, who have $46.5 million in cap room, and the Indianapolis Colts are the 2 teams who potentially could sign Dre Greenlaw away from the Niners this offseason. The Lions and the Colts. It's interesting. He just built a house or buying a house in Dallas, from what I'm hearing. I was thinking maybe Dallas or maybe Houston. I was thinking maybe go play for D'Amico. But I really want to see the Niners bring this guy back. I know there's risk involved with this body and the injuries, but I just really believe that it's important for their culture to pass it down, to have this guy in the room. He plays so freaking hard. I don't care if he plays so freaking hard for 6 games. I want it on film that somebody's on this defense plays that freaking hard. So somebody might actually try to meet that standard.
Jamie and Sherwood's a really good option there. I really like his game.
Do you?
He played with Saleh. He was the Jets' 3rd linebacker, and that's because you had C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams, and those are great linebackers that the Jets had, and he was the 3rd guy, and he popped off on the tape. If you can't get Greenlaw, he's an option. I also like Akeem Davis-Gaither from Cincinnati.
Yes,
he was
I like
the 3rd
him too.
linebacker there. There are some decent options if you get priced out of Greenlaw. I think obviously it has to be a priority, but if it starts getting up 6, 7, 8 million, you got some questions to ask whether that's worth it with the injury history, or you go get somebody who's cheaper and younger and healthier. It would be a really tough call, but somebody might price you out.
That's going to do it for us. 90 minutes in, over 2,000 people hanging out. So, man, I really appreciate every single one of you guys. Very, very cool. We're brought to you by Better, and this live stream is brought to you by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. If everybody could give us a like and a subscribe before they bolt for the door, man, I would appreciate that. If you hit the like, it just helps more people kind of find the show. And if you hit subscribe, every time we go live, you'll get a little notification that we're going live, and you don't have to miss any of the action. And, of course, thanks to our good friends at Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. My good friend Anthony Catania runs Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, on the Monterey Peninsula. Give him a call at 831-521-5264 for all your sports cards and collectible needs. And thanks to Pig and a Pickle. If you're hanging out, if you're in Northern California, stop by, get some barbecue. Damon and Mary, the owners of Pig and a Pickle, they're great people. I did a little meet and greet there for the NFC Championship game. A lot of people came out. A lot of fun. What's that?
Pun intended there? Meet and greet?
Yeah, it was actually a MEAT and greet.
Nice.
So yeah, but they're awesome. Thanks to them for being the title sponsors of the Krug Show. As I said, we're going to spring training. We've already booked it. We'll be in Scottsdale for a week of Giants baseball and some golf. I'm bringing my boys down. We're gonna have a good time. Looking forward to that. And if anybody wants to be one of our additional sponsors, the entire month of March is also available with our sponsorship to spring training. So we'll talk more about that with anybody who has interest. Just contact me, and we can at least see if we're mutually beneficial to one another. And that's going to do it. Jake, tell people where they can find you. And I know you put a bunch of stuff out there, and Jake's one of the best in the business covering the Niners, really, really on top of it, and is front and center for all of it throughout training camp, throughout the whole season, and does amazing work. So tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, follow me and Dieter. Follow Dieter and Hutch on YouTube. We are grinding draft stuff. We're grinding through it. We just did some Shrine Bowl. Senior Bowl will be up tomorrow. 5 guys that we each liked. We're grinding through. We will have a draft guide at some point at the end of this cycle. We are grinding through it. Obviously, Dieter's got the kid coming, but got the kid here. But we're grinding through it. We're working on it, and we're pumping stuff out. And also, if you need something to listen to before the old big game, doing a show 12 to 3 with on 95.7. So listen to me there if you're alone and you need something to listen to, or just throw it on.
You're doing a Super Bowl pregame on Super Bowl Sunday, 12 to 3 on 95.7 The Game. So check that out. That's an Odyssey station, and Jake's an Odyssey guy. And then is it on the Odyssey app as well? Is that how?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll pump it out on my Twitter at Hutch Diesel. You can find writing stuff there. Wrote a little Jimmy Butler column today, and got more draft stuff coming out through there. So,
well, actually, I wasn't sure if I could ask you about that. So give me your thoughts, and I bring this up because there's a story breaking tonight that the Warriors could look to make more noise even after the trade deadline. They're saying that Bruce Brown, who landed in New Orleans as part of a return in the Brandon Ingram trade with Toronto, he's on a $23 million contract for this season. And his list of suitors after the buyout is smaller than other candidates. But New Orleans could choose to keep Brown as part of their rebuilding phase around Zion Williamson. But if they choose to go the buyout route with Brown, they say Golden State could be a fascinating option as an upgrade from some of the young talent on the Golden State roster. That would, this is a guy, if you added him, a guy like Bruce Brown, to Jimmy Butler, now you've added 2 really athletic, kind of tough players that could give you a much more of a, I don't know. I mean, that's what do you think? I mean, Jimmy Butler's going to already give them, I think, a whole level of toughness that I think Wiggins kind of lacked. Attack on Wiggins, but what do you think?
I'm seeing a report from Jake Fisher that says they're not going to buy out Bruce Brown, but as far as Butler is concerned, to me, it's, it does a couple things. Number one, this is a season that felt like you're living in purgatory. It was draining. You saw it on Steph's face. So everyone involved in the season is like exhausted by it. They're like, what are we? Like, we're exasperated. And they knew it wasn't going anywhere. And you could, Pods is playing better, Andrew Wiggins and Kuminga can come back. They know it's not going anywhere. And from the perspective alone that the NBA is an entertainment product and the Warriors were not an entertaining team and so consistently blow games, you go out and you get a guy who's a finisher for basically the price of the sunk cost of the Dennis Schroeder trade, which is like a few second rounders in the future, Schroeder, and you're really trading him for Wiggins. And so you go, all right, we're just going to bet everything on the next 3 years on Draymond and Steph and Jimmy Butler figuring it out. And then the slate is wiped clean. The Warriors are saying very clearly that after this year, next year, the year after, everything is on the table. They're gonna wipe it clean. But for these next 3 years, that's what they're working with, and they have a core where at least it makes sense. So I'm a big fan of it. I don't think it's a perfect move by any stretch of the imagination, but I think Butler is a guy that there's so much pressure on Steph at the end of games. Having Butler makes it so much harder for teams to just assault Steph in those waning minutes where he's desperately trying to get around screens. I think it's going to be tough with the motion offense, and Butler is much more of an ISO player and not necessarily in the same flow. So there's going to be some growing pains. But at the end of games, I think it gives the Warriors way more options, and great players figure out a way, man. So I like it. I like it. I don't think it's perfect, but it's a lot better than them standing pat.
On the way out, there was a great article that I wanted to ask you about earlier in the show from Eric Branch, and he was just talking about the top cut candidates for the Niners. And I'll just throw a name out, and you just say he stays or he's gone. How about that?
Okay.
I just a few of them. Yatir Gross-Matos. Is he? What do you think? Does he stay or does he go?
I think he stays. I think you could restructure that deal a little bit, but there was actually quite a bit to like from him. And I just think you're going to have to replace him by finding another edge, and he's kind of flexible positionally. He's young. He's athletic. I think he stays.
Kyle Juszczyk.
I think he stays. They're not saving that much money, and you're just giving up the fullback position completely. And he's basically your second tight end.
Debo.
I think he stays for one more year, and then he's gone.
Brendel.
My gut is he stays, even though I think they should probably move on. That's like a 51-49. I think if they can get Drew Dahlman, they go that route.
Leonard Floyd, last one.
Probably stays. They just don't have a lot of depth, and it's not sexy, but I think he stays.
For the crazy Giant fan that may be watching, because I know there's a few of them, saw a rumor today that Anthony Rizzo to the Giants. Rizzo's prime is obviously come and gone. He's still got a pretty good glove. Hit 228 last year with 8 home runs, as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's had back-to-back years of fewer than 100 games. They said that the Padres and the Mariners and the Giants all potentially looking at the 35-year-old former Cubby. What do you think? Giants, Rizzo, will the Giants, they didn't go for the polar bear. Will they go for Anthony Rizzo?
Probably, because he's way worse. And the Giants love to just be like, well, we're going to go get this. I don't know. Why are they not trying to get Pete Alonso? It's hard for me to even talk about the San Francisco Giants. Sure, go get Anthony Rizzo, who can strike out 1,000 times next season. Awesome. It's really going to move the needle. It's really going to make them a little bit more than above break even.
Jake, great stuff, man. Thanks for coming on tonight. Thanks to all of you guys. I'm back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. streaming on Friday, looking ahead to Super Bowl 59. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks to Jake. Thanks to all of you. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.